Howdy there, everybody. Welcome back to Nancy Drew Mobile Mystery Shadow Ranch. We're gonna solve a mini mystery today. The Phony Photographer. The Phony Photographer. Nancy and Bess visit Tumbleweed for some sightseeing and shopping. Bess suggests that they go off on their own and meet back later. As Nancy wanders around the town, she passes an old-fashioned movie theater. Suddenly, its main door slams open, and two men appear, gripping the arms of a portly, middle-aged man between them. "Bingham's the one you should be throwing out," the man in the middle cries, struggling mightily, his face contorted with rage. "He's the villain here, not me! He's a fraud, I tell you! A complete fraud!" The two men shove him toward the street as they release him. "Tell it to your shrink, pal," one of them says. The other man turns to the woman in the nearby ticket booth. "If that guy comes in again, call the cops and tell him to bring a straight jacket." The two men turn and re-enter the building. Glowering with anger and frustration, the heavy-set man straightens his clothes and smooths his thinning hair. Then he spots Nancy, who stopped when the man was pushed into her path. "If you were planning to go to that lecture," he says, gesturing towards the theater doors, "don't! The man giving it is a liar and a cheat and knows nothing about birds or photography." Then suddenly he's peering at her, his anger morphing into curiosity. "Don't I know you?" Nancy peers back at him and wondering the same thing. She's seen this man before, but where? Then it hits her. She had run into him while solving a previous case. Ghost dogs of Moon Lake! Moon Lake! You're the birdwatcher! "I remember you," he says, his tone strangely accusatory. "Strixvaria!" No, actually, I'm Nancy Drew," she says, starting to think perhaps the other man was right about the straitjacket. "Strixvaria is the name of the bird I just spotted before you came crashing through the woods and scared him away." Her face brightens as it all comes back to her. "And your name is Red Knott." "Not," he scowls. "I mean not. Red Knott." Embarrassed by her slip of the tongue, she clears her throat and changes the subject. "So, what's going on? Why did those men throw you out?" "For telling the truth about Birdman Bingham here." He jabs his finger at the billboard hanging by the door. It features a handsome man in his 40s, camera slung around his neck, various birds happily perched along his blonde head, broad shoulders, and tanned arms. The bold lettering reads, "Lecture and Slideshow by Carl Birdman Bingham, January 11th and 12th, 2 p.m. He buys or just plain steals photographs real bird watchers have taken," the man explains, growing angrier with each word. "Then he makes up stories about how he took 'em, gets a poster made that shows off his good looks, then goes around giving lectures to elderly nature lovers at $15 a pop. It's criminal! He must be stopped." He heaves a bitter sigh as he continues. "Unfortunately, I seem to have blown my chance." Then, remembering something, his face begins to light up. "But you were always snooping around asking questions, weren't you? Yeah, you're a full-on Budinsky. Bustin' Birdman should be right up your alley." "While I am something of a detective," Nancy clarifies, amused by his choice of words. "And as I recall in Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, I did have to take pictures of birds for Red Knott, so Nancy knows about taking pictures of birds. So this is right up Nancy's alley." "Then go in there and expose 'em," he pleads. "You must. It's your civic duty." "I know a few things about birds, but I'm no expert," Nancy replies uncertainly. "That's the beauty of it. Neither is he. Just try, please." "I'll see what I can do," Nancy finally tells him, "but no promises." The older man grins excitedly. "Just keep your ears open. And when he says something stupid, which he will because he's a moron, stand up and nail him." She nods, takes a deep breath, then heads for the ticket window. Buying a ticket. "One, please," Nancy says, opening her purse. The young woman in the booth regards her suspiciously. "Are you a whack job, too?" Nancy follows her gaze to Red, who has sat down on a bench in some nearby shade. She smiles at the woman reassuringly. Oh no, I was just, being nice. She takes Nancy's money and gestures towards the door. Enjoy! Nancy goes through the door, makes her way through the small lobby, and enters the auditorium. The two men who escorted Red outside sit on either side of the aisle by the door. One reads a paperback, the other, eyes closed, bobs to a tune buzzing in his earphones. She moves quietly past them and settles in a seat at the end of a row. Glancing around, she sees that almost all of the seats in the tiny theater are occupied largely by middle-aged women, most of whom seem to enjoy looking at the man on stage as much as they do at the images being projected on the movie screen behind him. This next photo is one of my favorites, he says, pressing a button attached to the laptop on the podium. A bright red bird, its face accented with a black mask and its head topped with a pointed crest, fills the screen. The background, a soft blur of green, yellow, and purple, enhanced the bird's brilliant plumage and dramatic pose. He smiles in acknowledgement of the murmurs of approval rippling through his audience. The northern cardinal is fairly common here in Arizona, but I captured this male with a long lens when it was perched on the edge of a garden, resting in a photo that's pretty spectacular, if I do say so myself. He flashes a white-toothed smile as a group of older women applaud. Then he presses the button again. This time the bird that appears has a round metallic green head and back, gray wings, and a red-orange belly topped with a dramatic strip of white. It clings to the branch of a pine tree, a clear blue sky behind it. Some of you might recognize this as a male elegant trogon, a bird that is mostly found in Mexico and Central America. Ha! Ha! But after spending days hiking in the Huachuca Mountains, I managed to snap this picture. Well worth the effort, wouldn't you agree? His audience responds with nods and smiles. After many more slides accompanied by detailed descriptions of how each was taken, the image of two very small owls appears on the screen. They are perched on a cactus, and their heads are swiveled so their wide yellow eyes are looking into the camera. Ooh, nice. A single moth, a large moth, it's single, it doesn't have a girlfriend yet. It is dangling between the beaks of the owls. So comical are the expressions of the two birds that the audience erupts into exclamations of delight. Yes, the speaker grins. This is one of my favorites too. Ha! And I very nearly missed it. You see, I just hiked to a remote grove of saguaro cacti and was setting up my camera when I heard the whoosh of bird wings. Two whooshes, actually, one right after the other, directly over my head. So I looked up and there were these two elf owls scrambling back and forth on the arm of a nearby cactus, fighting over the moth they'd simultaneously caught. His audience nods and murmurs as he presses the button once more. And with that photo, which I consider to be the best I've yet taken, I bring my slideshow to a close. An image of himself appears on the screen, camera in hand, about to snap a photo. Does anyone have a question? A woman raises her hand and stands when he acknowledges her. I think I speak for everyone here when I say those pictures were absolutely magnificent. The audience applauds in enthusiastic agreement. Birdman Bingham smiles and bows with seeming modesty. And you took them all yourself? The woman goes on when the applause dies down. I did indeed, he confirms. That's not true, Nancy calls out suddenly, rising to her feet. The audience falls silent, stunned. Then, seats groan and clothing rustles as everyone in the theater turns in her direction. The man on stage scowls as she goes on. I know for a fact that you didn't take the picture of those elf owls. I don't recall seeing you in that cactus grove, the speaker says, glaring at her. I wasn't there, she admits, but then, neither were you. So how does Nancy know this? I'm not entirely sure. So let's see. We have the owls. They're on screen. They're on a cactus. They're looking at the camera, and they're fighting a moth. All right, all right. So, I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Could it be that owls are nocturnal? Could that be the problem with the story? Could it be that owls don't hunt while they're sitting on a cactus because they're resting there? Okay, they're owls. Whoosh of bird wings. Oh, that's right. Owls are silent. They're silent flyers. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, Nancy, you got me. But more importantly, you got the phony Birdman Bingham. What you said about hearing the whoosh of bird wings gave you away. Because of the way their wings are feathered, owls don't make any noise when they fly. They're completely silent. Exclamations of surprise, followed by scowls of suspicion, passed through the audience. A few people nod in confirmation of her observation. And since you lied about taking that picture, it's only logical to assume you're lying about taking the other pictures as well. But before Nancy can say more, someone grabs hold of her arm. "These people paid to hear him, not you," growls one of the men who tossed Red Knott out of the theater earlier. "Time to leave." But the damage is done. As the two men hustle Nancy up the aisle towards the exit, many audience members rise to leave. Well, it is the end of the presentation. Anyway, "Don't listen to her," Birdman Bingham says over the commotion, trying to sound reassuring. "Those two owls I photographed did make noise. They must have been mutants or something." The theater door opens once again, and this time Nancy is ejected onto the sidewalk. But to Red Knott's delight, dozens of erstwhile audience members come through the doors after her, shaking their heads and muttering angrily as they march off. "What happened?" he asks breathlessly as he joins Nancy. "Well, with any luck," Nancy smiles, "Mr. Bingham just gave his last lecture." "I knew you could do it!" the birdwatcher happily exclaims. "I knew your nosiness could be used for good!" Before Nancy can reply to this left-handed compliment, he suddenly spots something hovering beside a nearby crimson bougainvillea. "Speaking of a long proboscis, there's a hummingbird," he says. Suddenly distracted, "Why, I think it's a white-eared—" Forgetting all about Nancy, eyes glued to the bird, he hurries away. Nancy looks after him, then sighs. Soon, Bess joins up with Nancy. Alright, so that's it. That is the end of our fun little mini mystery, The Phony Photographer.